Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? And I hope you guys are enjoying another Saturday morning. If you guys are listening on the podcast for Apple Podcasts and Spotify, a 5 stars will help the movement. It will help the motion of the podcast as our voices continue to be heard. Now, today I'm going to be informing you on the recent topics, the most important news that took place in the recent week. I'm going to try to be as biased as possible related to facts and obviously tell you my personal opinions regarding everything afterwards. So I hope you guys do enjoy the podcast episode and let's dive right into it. Now, moving forward, I will be kind of diving into things section by section for the most part. And what I mean by that is that there's going to be 7 topics that I'll be discussing every week that I think is the most important topics. They're all going to be based on kind of the most, not only famous, most popular topics, one of the most relevant topics as well to you as an individual. So let's start off right from the top with the MAGA Trucker New York protest situation. If you remember last week, I kind of told you the details in reference to Donald Trump basically getting tried and having to pay over $350 million from a case due to his fraudulent New York dealings that took place in New York. Now, not only that, but he was also banned from taking a leadership position or doing business in New York as well for the next couple of years, too. Now, this case, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, the ruling is official. He has to pay this amount of money. And there are some people that were very upset, big MAGA supporters, matter of fact. And these MAGA supporters, spearheaded by an individual named Chicago Ray, said that he was going to do a protest as a trucker and that he was going to get his trucker buddies to protest New York, in the sense that they won't deliver goods to New York, which will obviously hamper the economy of that state and will bring business down tremendously if that went through and they had enough people. Now, this was huge. It's all over the internet. There's hashtags going all over the place when it comes to MAGA truckers, when it comes to MAGA morons. A lot of people talking about the situation and these truckers and how they responded to a decision that they didn't like. Now, I want you to keep in mind something that's very important. There is hypocrisy on both sides at times when it comes to how they react to a situation they disagree with. Right. We see this from the BLM riots that took place, whether you agree with what happened or not, to people like George Floyd, or I think his name is Smollett. And then there's this situation where something again happened to Trump and a lot of people weren't happy and they wanted to do something about it. There needs to be a certain level of peaceful protest. There needs to be a certain level of nuance, and there needs to be a certain level of understanding what actually happened when we're talking about the facts. Now, at some point, Chicago Ray himself realized that this is a situation that is getting very big and resonating to a lot of people. Matter of fact, I think Donald Trump either endorsed what he said as a TikTok video or he reposted what he said. And afterwards, a couple days later, Chicago Ray, the individual, tweeted that he deleted the initial video because he was having a huge argument with him and his grandson. And he even quoted regarding the situation saying as follows: just to be clear, I'm no figurehead for any movement. I'm not leading, nor have I encouraged, or am I encouraging anyone to do anything other than what they were doing prior to the ruling on Friday in New York City. So he, as an individual, was kind of taking back what he did initially. And I have another perspective. And instead of kind of saying what happened, I'm allowed this individual, who's also a trucker, to outlay his opinions regarding the matter as well. So give me a second. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm going to play the audio. And if you're watching, then I'm going to show the video for you guys as well.
The media, and according to some influencers, there is a trucker strike against New York City. Now, I would admit, I don't have the biggest following, but it's a fair amount. It's fair amount enough that people just randomly walk up to me like, "Hey, it's good to meet you. I've seen your videos," and I have no idea who they are. And if you do that, and I give you a blank look, I promise you, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just don't know who you are, but I'm happy to meet you and talk to you. But anyway, so this trucker strike, nobody's talked to me about it, and I know a lot of other guys on other platforms are like, yeah, no, we've never talked about it either. So one, strike against New York City, not over the Trump case. Now I will tell you this: there is a lot of us that refuse to go in the boroughs. I won't even cross the GW Bridge. I will go through pains to get permits to take me around 287 and drop me out on 95 to go up to New England, as opposed to crossing the GW. Now, why have so many truckers just simply refused to go to the boroughs? Because parking is non-existent. You can't get anywhere near it. It's wildly expensive getting into the city and getting out with the tolls. Traffic is horrendous. You'll lose a whole day going in and coming out. And if you tried to plan a load, your next load, you're probably going to lose it because you're going to lose so much time getting in and out. Then you got lumpers, but that's everywhere. But and crime is wild. Then you got people making money tattletaling on you for running your truck. I'm not going to sit in my truck and freeze or sweat. You can suck my left nut. I'm not doing it. So I'm just not going to go there. I have not been to the boroughs in 15 years. There's a lot of us that'd be like, no, not doing it, no more. And there's people in the industry that never been that go one time. They're like, no. And it's such a problem that trucking companies that say, we are forced dispatch. You will go where we tell you to go. Will not force a driver to go to New York City. We'll say, are you willing? And they will pay a bonus to try to get you to go. Also, a lot of guys don't go because they've got 53-foot trailers. There's areas in New York City where you cannot have a 53-foot trailer by law. So it has to go on something shorter. So here's the thing, guys. There's no trucker strike over this court case. Yes, some guys are mad. Yes, some that have got a big following have gone viral talking like, oh, we're not going to go. It's like Colorado. They didn't stop going to Colorado. Colorado flinched because of a bunch of blowhards talking. You can't get two drivers agree the sky is blue or it's raining, and they're standing out there getting drenched. That's just a simple fact of the matter, folks.
So that's what a trucker guy had to say regarding the matter, and I just wanted to share it. I thought it was interesting when it came down to it. Now, the second bit of news is in reference to Israel-Palestine. I'm going to kind of tell you some of the things that took place in the recent week. This conflict will continuously be important, not only for people who care about the circumstances and the situation, but also for elections, as this is going to be a hot button issue that the Democrats and the Republicans will continuously talk about on how they plan to handle this circumstance and the situation, as well as our relationship with other countries, and I'll talk about that in a second. So to start off, Israel was planning to expand its ground operation in Gaza's southern city of Rafah by the start of Ramadan if Hamas does not return the remaining hostages held in the enclave by then. Israel's war minister warned this, and Ramadan, from what we're aware of, may start around March 10th of this year, which is, it's kind of crazy, I'll be honest, starting a conflict, a operation on the most important day to the religious Islamic people of Gaza, of Palestine. For the most part, a lot has taken place. A lot of people have been killed, a lot of people have been injured, and as of right now, the United Nations International Court of Justice began a week of public hearings over the legality of Israel's role in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the annexed East Jerusalem. So these hearings took place, and a lot of these countries were trying to figure out what they want to do, especially the fact that a lot of them potentially wanted a ceasefire. Matter of fact, the only country that vetoed a resolution from the United Nations Security Council calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip was the United States, and a 13-1 vote, with the UK abstaining. This is tough, and it sheds America in a very weird light, where all these other countries are asking for a ceasefire regarding the situation. And the United States, especially due to our relationship with Israel, is unwilling to call for that ceasefire, not necessarily thinking that Israel is justified, but supporting the actions of Israel altogether. Now, that's not the end of the hearing. Matter of fact, Israel actually agreed to resend negotiators to participate in the Qatar mediated ceasefire talks to pause fighting in the Gaza Strip. So ultimately, this could be a huge situation. For me, I've always said that the circumstance between Hamas and Israel is very complicated. With Palestine and Israel, very complicated with the dawn of their history and how everything turned out in terms of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. How they were both kind of justified to be at the land that they were, which caused the kind of conflict between the two, with Israel basically coming on top, and consistent conflict from there, with people believing that Israel coming out on top are kind of just occupying the Palestinians. And then October 7th happened. It's a very murky situation with no clear right guy, justified guy. And with the situation as it is right now, with Israel being more and more aggressive to the people and making operations into Rafah, and Egypt threatening to end the peace agreement between Israel, we there needs to be a step of peace. There needs to be some type of end to this, because there's not going to be a win-win for Israel. If Israel just goes out there and just eliminates all of the Hamas and kills more and more people, they're going to be basically seen as a very negative figure throughout the entire world, especially if you push a lot of these people into other countries, which is a hot button issue in terms of migrants leaving their country and basically staying in another country. So, what will happen moving forward? It really depends on how this negotiations going to go regarding the ceasefire talks, and of course, there's going to be more conversations regarding the UN and how this should be handled. So, that's all I got regarding the Israel Palestine stuff. Definitely let me know what you guys think. Again, I do think it's a complicated situation, but I think at this point, my position at first was that Hamas needs to accept that they're just not going to win this. But now I think Israel has all the leverage, and I do think they need to take a step in the right direction and ending this for good. And is that a two-state solution? It may have to be, and you just might have to eat it, especially if you want to keep relations with other countries across the world, right? You don't want to burn bridges, of course. Next bit of news is that the newly installed Louisiana governor, Jeff Landry, declares state of emergency amid police shortage. This is definitely huge news, as more and more people are becoming more unwilling to basically join the police force. The trust in the police has dwindled so much over the years, and then by proxy of that, less and less officers are going to be wanting to join the police force, or maybe even less qualified officers altogether. So, to kind of read you some of the stuff that's going on, Governor Jeff Landry declared the state of emergency, citing the critical shortage of law enforcement officers. The declaration, which suspends certain hiring and payroll restrictions, aims to address the staggering deficit of approximately 1,800 deputies across Louisiana Sheriff's Office, a shortfall blamed for slower response times and increased crime rates. The emergency order, which took effect on February 15th and is slated to run through March 15th, removes caps on how many new employees sheriffs can hire and authorizes payroll increases for their departments. This action comes just ahead of the state legislators' special session on crime set to begin on Monday. Landry, who has previously served as both a police officer and a sheriff's deputy, asserted the significance of bolstering law enforcement, supporting starting the executive order on the upcoming crime special session will ensure our law enforcement officers are supported and we can begin to bring law and order back to our state. The Police Executive Research Forum, a Washington, D.C. based think tank, noted a stark increase in law enforcement resignations, which spiked by 47% in 2022 compared to 2019, the year before the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd, a high profile incident that took place that had ramifications all across the country. I do understand why people were upset regarding the George Floyd incident, and I'm not going to touch upon that right now. What I will talk about is that based off the incident and based off the perception of police, ultimately the idea of defunding the police, the idea of less police officers, the idea of all cops are bad is just not a good thing for society. And I hope we can all agree to that sentiment. If we have less people that are here to protect the people, then that's just more danger altogether. We recognize that there can be criminals at every corner. There can be bad people at every corner, and when in doubt, when you need help the most, you call 911. There shouldn't be an expectation for me, at the very least, that you have to consistently be able to defend yourself and the people around you, especially if you don't have that capability. We don't live in times of war. We don't live in times of danger where we have to do everything to survive. We live in a different society where we can create a force to protect the people who are dedicated to the cause. But now more people have lost faith in cops, and more people think that if I become a cop, that will have a bad stigma to it. So ultimately, that's just more danger for everybody else. So take into consideration that your dismissal of cops and their value ultimately is not a good thing. We should strive for a more efficient police force. I've said myself, my personal opinion is that we shouldn't have fat cops, right? We should have cops that are well trained, of course. I mean, we should have cops that are not getting not basically cops that are consistently in caring about the people, not seeing people as a stereotype, not seeing people as a number, not getting complacent at the job. And there are ways to go about that to make a more efficient force, but we can't get there if we have no police force, if we don't fund the police force, of course. So that is something that is taking place, and hopefully that resonates with you when it comes to your location, that you want people to protect everybody else, right? That's valuable, and we all should be able to agree to that. Moving forward, the next piece of news I have for you is some statistics regarding graduate students from high school and graduates from higher education, college, university, so on and so on. There's a statistic out there saying that 25% in higher education earn less than a high school graduate. An analysis of earnings data showed that 10 years after enrolling in higher education programs, 1 in 4 earn less than high school graduates. Data from that Department of Education tracked the earnings of about 5 million students from almost 4,000 colleges and other higher education. The median annual income of high school graduates is $32,000. The findings may help explain the growing pessimism among Americans about whether a college degree justifies taking on student debt, which tops $37,000 per borrower. Many of the colleges are trade schools offering certificates in cosmetology and other vocational programs. Some are community colleges, religious institutions, and arts programs offering bachelor's degrees. Attendees of about 2,800 U.S. colleges earn more than high school grads, but some come out slightly ahead. Attendees of about 90 institutions earn $32,000 to $33,000 annually a decade after enrollment. But economic research points to a well documented wage premium that grows over time. Ivy League colleges produce the highest income for alumni 10 years after graduation. UPenn graduates top the list at an average of $112,000. However, the colleges educate relatively few American students. So this is very interesting and important information when it comes down to it. That the income of college graduates is not r- separating itself from high school graduates enough to justify the student loan debt that you may go into. Now, the number is about 25% based off these numbers, based off this survey for the most part. But 25% is a lot, and it will only continue to increase. Now, for me, my personal opinion, I always tell people that you should go to college. Obviously, if you have a specialty, doctors, engineers, lawyers, you have to go to college. That's a no brainer. But you should go to college with purpose. I heard someone, I think it was Destiny, saying that if you don't know what you want to do, go to college. And I disagree with that sentiment. I do agree that an individual will, if they don't go to college, could find themselves kind of not doing anything anyway. Like that 4 years of college, they could just be 4 years of fast food. Like you're still not going anywhere. But this is how I want to present the situation. Let's focus on the people who have purpose, who have drive, right? The people who are purposeless, who won't take advantage of their resources, will fail regardless. So we don't even have to talk about them. The turning point for them will have to come to them naturally. Now, there is more time to kind of put yourself in the right situation if you're not put in debt, I would argue, and you're forced to live in society. I would argue for the people who have no purpose, they are able to acquire that trigger of like finding purpose better if they are putting in situations forcing them to progress in life, forcing them to grow in life. I think college kind of provides a certain level of stagnation if you're purposeless, because you're just mounting debt without direction. You're just doing tests, maybe cheating on tests, and not really taking advantage of the opportunity that not only are you wasting, but you're wasting for the institution of someone else who may be able to take advantage of that opportunity. So let's focus on the individuals that will take something out of the resources and the opportunity they're given. Unless you have a direction, unless you have a specific thing that you want to do going to college, it's better off if you go a different route. If your goal is to be successful, there's ways for success that doesn't necessarily require for you to go to college. There are programs you can learn, there are things that you can study, and there are routes you can take that you don't have to put yourself in massive debt. Now, if you have a vision of a certain specialty that you want to go in that's not lawyer, that requires you to go to graduate school, then at that point, going to college may be able to put you in an environment that basically allows you to flourish, which I do think is a maybe a well founded risk in terms of investing in yourself. But ultimately, as we see with with the internet and with these different programs that are popping up, people are able to achieve success in their own way, not necessarily becoming a famous content creator, but learning and finding knowledge and information and gaining experience in a matter of in a way that doesn't forces you to invest a potential detrimental way. You can invest in yourself with time, with dedication, with knowledge, versus investing in yourself monetarily, which doesn't guarantee a better outcome, because there are a lot of people who go to college, invest in themselves, end up in debt, and don't even do a job that is associated with their degree. So these numbers, as they continuously come out, it wouldn't surprise me as more and more people lose faith in college, which is why free college programs are a smart idea moving forward, of course, for people who want to get an education but don't want to put themselves in $30,000 debt. So that's just my opinion regarding college and these recent facts. And it's going to be important to consider moving forward how this number will change in terms of the percentage. Let's move on to the next thing. Speaking of college, the Biden administration cancels $1.2 billion in federal student loan debt for roughly 153,000 people who borrowed less than $12,000 and have made payments for at least 10 years. If you remember when he was talking about the kind of canceling the debt, there are certain things that he could and couldn't kind of get approved. And this is officially one of those things that he did was able to get approved in terms of people who have been in debt for a very long time, kind of giving them an opportunity to restart themselves to an extent. Now, it's not a complete overhaul for all the people involved, but if you're an individual who believe that the reset with federal student loan debt and the deferment of student loan debt, especially during COVID time, was a good thing, then you should probably be happy about this situation. Of course, people on the right still are not going to like this, but there needs to be a recognition based off what I just said in terms of people not getting the bang for their buck in terms of their individual investment. This is a good thing for people. And hopefully, these people will take this newfound opportunity and financial freedom to do better for themselves, their family, and their community. Moving forward, we got the Texas judge who finds Houston area high school dress code, which resulted in a student suspension over the length of his dreadlocks, did not violate state law. And this case was huge, as as simple as I can put it. This case was huge. I saw it all over social media when it came down to it. Of this student that had dreadlocks and had basically was suspended from his school until he, I guess, got him cut. Um, I do want to read you some information, then I'll give you my personal opinion regarding the situation, of course. A black high school student's month-long punishment by his Texas school district for refusing to change his hairstyle does not violate state law that prohibits race-based hair discrimination, as I discussed just earlier. Daryl George, 18, has not been in his regular Houston area high school classes since August 31st because the district, Barbers Hill, says the length of his hair violates its dress code. The district filed a lawsuit arguing George's long hair, which he wears in tied and twisted locks on top of his head, violates its policy because it would fall down below his shirt collar, eyebrows, or earlobes when let down. The district said other students with locks comply with the length policy, and obviously they are not suspended for it. Now, after about 3 hours of testimony, in the district judge for this state district judge, Chap Kane III ruled in favor of the school district, saying its policy is not discriminatory because the Crown Act does not say that exemptions for long hair can be made for hairstyles that are protected by the law, including locks. And he said courts must not attempt to rewrite legislation. This is a interesting case, and it went all over the internet, all over. I've seen it everywhere. And the suspension ultimately was due to the refusal of changing his hairstyle. Now, we got some other quotes and information that I think you guys may find interesting. We have a quote saying the Texas legal system has validated our position that the district's dress code does not violate the Crown Act and that the Crown Act does not give student unlimited self-expression, said the superintendent of Barbers Hill. We also got some other things said by the mother saying, wearing locks is how I feel closer to my people. It's how I feel closer to my ancestors. It's just me. It's how I am, George said. This is what George said, not his mother, of course. And after the ruling, the mother cried, went to reporters, and she said to a reporter, all because of, oh, no, this is what George said, all because of my hair. I can't get my education because of my hair. We have more things saying anyone familiar with braids, locks, twists knows it requires a certain amount of length. Almost impossible for a person to comply with this grooming policy and wear that protective hairstyle. Uh, we have a U.S. Representative, Bonnie Watson Coleman, saying this is what we mean by institutional racism. And then we have the another thing regarding the policy and why it's implemented for Barbers Hill, saying that the district with a traditional dress code are safer and have higher academic performance, and that being an American requires conformity. So there's a lot to kind of talk about in regards to this, and I'm gonna kind of mention my own perspective regarding the matter of fact. First things first, I want to establish something that's very important to me at the very least. There's a difference between not agreeing with a policy and not agreeing with the position versus and not agreeing with the policy, not agreeing with the position, and basically going against the policy and position versus the policy inherently being racist or anything, right? For me, when it comes down to this situation, from what I've seen, from the information I've seen, I think the idea of someone not being able to wear their locks and dreads as a policy is ridiculous, right? I don't really know if Barbara Hill's a private school or a public school. I do want to look that up real quick. All right, I looked it up and it said it is a public school. So I personally don't like the policy itself, right? I don't like the policy. I don't think there should be an idea, a necessity of conformity that is so necessary to the point where you can't wear your hair past your shoulders. I don't think the policy has any valid reason, but the policy exists, right? Everybody knows the policy. So I want to point something out. You adamantly disagreeing with the policy is different from you defying the policy. I would go and pitch, and apparently a couple of students try to pitch that this policy should get taken away because I do think the policy doesn't make any sense. But you saying, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to the policy and do whatever I want," is just a step in the wrong direction. Now, you could argue that this is a symbolic protest to the extent that we're going to make it so much noise because of what happened that you're going to have to that we're going to force you to change the policy. That's a case you can make, but I doubt that the kid was ever thinking that he's going to be a symbol for that. Of course, I think he was just doing this just to defy the school. So if it's a policy that exists, you know that the policy exists and you do it anyway, I'm not going to feel bad for you. I'll be honest. That's just my opinion. That's why I said if you disagree with the policy, 100% do what you can to get that policy changed. But if you can't get it changed, then you just got to go somewhere else. Because a policy like this, although it doesn't make sense, is a policy that is equally represented for everybody. I think it's lazy when people bring in racism. It's lazy. It's ridiculous. And I think they're just playing up into the characterization. This guy is saying that I am connected with my ancestors. It's cringe and it's bullshit. I'm be honest. I doubt he ever thought about connecting to his ancestors when he put locks in. I think that's ridiculous. They're just playing into the media. And the call it institutional racism is again lazy and ridiculous. It would be racism, and if they could prove this, it would be racism if they only use this policy against certain people and then other people don't abide by that policy. But if that policy is evenly reinforced to every student, where every single student, whether you're white, Hispanic, black, could not wear your hair past your shoulders, past your eyebrows or whatever, if that is the rule for everybody, then that is the rule for everybody. So people, there's so many wrong things in this case. I see some people post on social media saying that this is why we say all the time we hate it when people copy our hairstyle, even though dreads and locks are not a originated black thing, but black people popularized it. I think all of that is ridiculous. I think all of it is ridiculous personally. And I think people are just getting upset based off headlines. We talked about it on today's podcast episode, what actually was going on. We had a school that had a policy. We had someone who didn't want to listen to the policy. And now the person is screaming racism. The person is saying that I'm trying to connect to my ancestors. And the school is just not budging. And I think the judge made the right call. I disagree with the policy. I think the policy is stupid as hell. But if this is their policy, if this is how they want to run their school, then who am I to say no? I only can do what I can do. I just gotta leave. I just can't go there. I think that's the only thing you can do at that point. If you want to wear your hair so badly in dreadlocks, then leave. You gotta leave. So yeah, I don't think it's racism. I just think it's a stupid policy. That's my personal take in regard to the matter. And I think we have one more take for our seventh bit of news of the week. And it's in regards to Switzerland, as Switzerland asked the UN to explore solo geoengineering. Switzerland has initiated a global debate on whether the risks, benefits, and uncertainties of dimming the sun should be studied by a UN expert group. The Swiss want the UN to gather information about research into solar geoengineering and set up an advisory panel to investigate its use to reduce global heating. The Swiss have proposed solar radiation modification to mimic the effect of a large volcanic eruption by filling the atmosphere with sulfur dioxide particles that reflect part of the sun's heat and light back into the space. Some areas the international community has rightfully decided are simply off limits, said Mary Church of the Center for International Environmental Law. Solar engineering belongs on that list. In 2022, about 500 scientists signed an appeal for a non-use solo geoengineering agreement that stipulated no public funding, deployment, patents, experiments, or support in international forums. So Switzerland is trying to get this kind of going. And this is interesting, solo geoengineering. We know that the planet of Earth is getting warmer. Obviously, it's people can say it's a problem if you're a big climate change activist, which I have no problem with. But the idea of manipulating the sun can be very, very, very dangerous to the point where when it comes down to the Earth, its position, and what happens, it's such a small percentage of margin of error to where the earth can be completely like destroyed, right? We can get too cold, too hot, and it'll ruin all of human civilization. So I can understand why this would be off limits, because if you kind of go down this route and you make a mistake, all human civilization could die. I would be curious because I've remember kind of learning about this. If we can create a system, and this may still follow under solo geoengineering, but create a system that kind of absorbs the energy from the sun while also taking back, keeping the heat at bay to an extent, but absorbing the energy and rerouting that energy to create other means. Because if you don't know, if we were able to harness the energy of the sun, human basic human technology would progress at a ridiculous level. Human ingenuity will go far beyond our current understanding if we were able to harness that much energy. But again, that plays into the danger of manipulating the amount of heat that the earth gets, of course. So that's just a thought that popped into my brain. It's an interesting suggestion that Switzerland is trying to do, but is this something that will eventually get changed in the future? I'm interested. I'm interested in hearing the conversation at the very least. So that is all we got for today's podcast episode about some of the most important events, news, agendas, things that took place in the recent week. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, tune in to our next podcast episode. I think I won't be having one Monday, but I will be having an episode drop on Thursday when I talk with Joan Blade to talk about living room conversations and talk about basically building trust in elections and how we can do that as a society, as a people. So hope you guys enjoyed. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.